dokie. Right. Had a few people join. Let me just share my screen, and I'll run through. So the last part on the agenda is my presentation, which is on it's partly on service short stays, and partly a bit about sort of my background and how I've ended up where we are today. So just checking the chat a bit. Oh, it's all good comments for you, Julie, in the chat. So that's really good. Well done, you. Okay, so this is a bit of a service accommodation overview. So I'll cover my sort of journey. So I'll do a bit of an introduction. I'll talk about what service accommodation is. I'll talk a bit about why we do it, and I'll talk about how we do it. And I'm also going to show you sort of real data, so some actual data on some of our properties, how the implementation of things like a pricing engine has changed, things like that. I'm also going to cover the coronavirus, so how we managed through the coronavirus. Well, I'm not going to say through it because we're not sort of out the other end yet, but certainly up to this point. Some of the decisions we made, some of the options that we investigated, and also I'll talk a bit about the impact on our revenue. I'm also going to talk about what we can do for property owners. As we go through, please just ask questions verbally or in the chat as we go through. I'd much rather answer the questions as we go through. If there's too many questions, I'll just manage the timing, so don't worry about that. So who am I? So who's Chris Ryder? So I mean, I spent 30 years in corporate life, basically doing everything to do with software. So I really liked corporate life. I didn't leave corporate life because I didn't like it. I just wanted to do something else. I wanted to do something else with my life. But I've covered all aspects of software development, from the very initial germ of an idea or creating the germs of ideas, really, all through the sort of standard project management disciplines of requirements capture, design, build, testing, integrating bits of software together, launching it, running it in life, upgrading it, and decommissioning it. So in my experience, some of the decommissioning exercises were some of the most difficult, and the stuff I worked on was mainly stuff that when it went wrong, you would read about in the newspapers the next day. So it tended to have stresses of its own, but quite big stuff, really interesting work. So that's who I am. So that's my non-property bit. My property bit is I started investing very, very casually. So I always talk about this in terms of 2001. So with another family member, bought a property. I really thought about it as Lisa's pension. So Lisa's my wife. She's on the call as well. She was for most of the last 20 years has been looking after our children. So Lisa wasn't working. So I was thinking, well, not earning. She was working very hard, but I wasn't sort of earning any money. So I really thought of this property purchase as Lisa's pension, really. I wasn't really thinking of it as bringing in any income. It was purely sort of capital growth and then income at some future point. So it's sort of something I bought and sort of forgot about, really. And then it took about a decade. So go Chris. I mean, obviously I was really busy in corporate life anyway, but around the sort of early 2010, 2011, so we've got two daughters, I started thinking the way house prices were going, I thought I needed to start maybe buying properties that they could have themselves, because I could just see the property was getting sort of quite expensive. And so I bought a very rundown sort of local authority flat in St Albans. It was in really poor condition. The guy had unfortunately died of lung cancer, but he'd smoked an awful lot, so the nicotine was everywhere, even round the mastic round the front door, which should have been white, was actually brown with nicotine. It was in a pretty poor state. I think it was on the market for about sort of 165. So this is a 2-bed, quite a nice sized flat actually. And at the time, I knew sort of one thing about property, and the one thing I knew was that stamp duty started at 125,000. So I put in an offer at 125,000, and the estate agent said thanks, but no thanks. And I sort of forgot about it really, and I went away. And then it was quite a few weeks, if not months later, the agent phoned me back, and he said if I wanted to put that offer in again, it was likely to be successful. So I put the offer in again, and it was successful. So sort of being a bit cheeky, it did sort of work in that instance, and we still got that property today. But around that time, I could see that property. Luckily, in the first property, we had a really good tenant, and I could see that it was a good way to earn income, without working for it, and physically working for it. So I thought there's something in this property. So I started to read a lot more. I started to invest in sort of property education, and also my own personal development. My personal development up to that point had been, really centered around corporate life. So I started to, really sort of become a lot more interested. I started attending meetings, and sort of once I get into something, I'd sort of take it on full, absolutely full. So around this time, I was sort of involved in the Property Hub very early days of the Property Hub actually, and I sort of started the Property Hub meeting in 2014. And at the very first meeting, there was 4 of us, and we met in the King William pub in Marshalswick, which is near where I live. And I cycled there because I intended to have a couple of beers, and that it sort of grew from there. And I just used to run it very ad hoc, and then the Robs wanted to start running meetings across the country, and started imposing the first Thursday of the month. So I used to sort of run the meetings as and when I had some time and energy to organise it. But the discipline of the first Thursday of the month came from the guys at the Property Hub and what they were doing nationally. So then I started working with other people. We started expanding our portfolio. So we got more single lets, and a sort of natural progression really is people, from my experience, sort of starting single lets and then want to start doing bigger things, and sort of HMOs is quite a good way to do that. So in terms of investment and return on investment, I still think HMOs are a really good way to go. And we've still got some of those, those today. Then the flat I'm actually in at the moment, which I showed a couple of you first off. So the first holiday let was purchased in 2014. I must call out Sue Maxwell Smith, who's on the call. So going back to 2014, this flat had a very short lease. I don't know if you remember, Sue.
I do, yes, very much so, yeah.
Good. So Sue was very kind in her time and effort and knowledge that she shared with us at that particular time, and made a huge difference and helped us. And we bought that flat, and that was absolutely the best thing. In fact, Sue, you've been to this flat, I know, and we've
yeah
cup of tea. So so I'm always grateful for your help at that time, Sue. So that first holiday let we purchased in 2014. This was a property that had been on the market 146,000, had failed. It was a banker. Banker had it as his sort of holiday home. He'd fallen on hard times, left the City of London, was living here This is in Broadstairs, and then it got repossessed by the bank. So this was a bank sale, had been agreed at 146,000, had failed. That purchase had failed. It came back on the market, and it came back on the market with another agent. So it was with one. It then got moved to two agents, and because I already had a relationship with this new agent, he told me about it. In fact, I wasn't down here. Lisa was down here with some friends, and Lisa viewed it, thought it looked good. Then I came down, and we sort of moved on from there. And we ended up buying it. But again, it was another property that was in pretty poor condition. But that's what we love doing. We love sort of getting poor properties and turning them into something really nice. Then. So that the reason why I talk a little bit about that property in 2014 is because the idea was that we were coming down to Broadstairs quite a lot anyway. So as a family, we were renting property down here 2 or 3 times a year. And I said to Lisa, we may as well buy somewhere ourselves. And so we started looking. So when we purchased the property in Broadstairs, the first property in Broadstairs, it was always with a view that we would use it ourselves some of the time and rent it out the rest. So that was our introduction, if you like, to holiday letting or service accommodation. And at the time, we were just using one OTA. So that's one online travel agent. OTA stands for online travel agent. And at the time, we were using holiday lettings. So it gave us some sort of income. I was still in corporate life. We could still use the property when we liked. And it sort of worked. It wasn't anything particularly serious, but it worked for us. Then, as we started to buy more properties, we started to think about the revenue, the extra revenue we could get by, instead of putting properties on ASTs, we could use it for serviced accommodation. So what I started to do was use some of the knowledge, some of the software knowledge I've got to build really good systems. So service accommodation you can create a very poorly paid admin job if you don't do it right. It is quite intensive. So service accommodation is, I'll come on to what service accommodation is, but it's short-term rental, less than 6 months, so not on an AST. So you rent the property by the night and it's all properly serviced. So as we started buying more properties, then we started to expand service accommodation. In November 2015, in fact, the 1st of November, I left corporate life. So there's a bit of a story around all this, but basically I worked for a large FTSE 100 company. It bought a company that I was already doing business with, and I knew that as part of that, there's some synergy going on that could actually provide me an exit route. And that's exactly what happened. And myself and a girl who worked for me, we both left on a package at that particular time. So I'd already decided, at least I'd already talked it through, and with a view to leaving corporate life and moving into property full time. And so that then enabled me to start exploiting my knowledge in systems and processes for our service accommodation business. So in 2017, we created Service Short Stays as a separate business. And we do a little bit of training. By training, I'm talking about we do it like once a year. And we do some management of third-party properties. Okay. So what is service accommodation? So just to make sure everyone understands, so service accommodation is a fully furnished apartment, or it could be a house, so any property really. In fact, we've got houses as well that we short-term let. In fact, we've got a house in St Albans that we short-term let. So it's available from any time from one night up to 6 months. So it's got to be less than 6 months. So by being less than 6 months, the people who stay there are guests, so they're not tenants. It's a completely different legislation. So that's a really important distinction. And you must provide all the amenities for daily use. So by that, I mean, there would be crockery and cutlery and bedding and towels and everything. So as long as you had your food and you had clothes, just like going on holiday. You could live there. So as I say, it can be normal flats and houses. The lease, if it's if you've got a lease, it must allow short-term letting. If you've got lending, so Sam's talked about that tonight. The lender either must be informed or must agree to the short-term letting, and that can happen. I know people who've written to the lender and requested that, and they've been allowed to short-term let. But typically, it's still a bit of a niche market. But you would get specific short-term mortgages. And also, if it's a flat or you've got a management company involved in the property, then they must be informed as well. So payment is calculated per night. You can set a minimum number of nights. For instance, we don't do one night stays. We would do stays from 2 nights onwards. In actual fact, at the moment, we've reset that to 3 nights onwards because of the COVID situation. And I'll come on to why we've done that later. You can charge per person, and we know, I know people that do this. So, for instance, if you've got a 2-bedroom apartment, you might have 1 bedroom's got a double bed, 1 bedroom's got 2 single beds, and you then might have a sofa bed in the lounge with maybe another 2 people. So you might charge, or you're able to charge by the person in that instance. So you might say that there's a fixed rate for 2 people, and then for every additional person, it would be another £15 a night or £20 a night. But we don't follow that model. I must admit, it's quite difficult to police. But certainly people do it, and they do it successfully. So it's something, if you were thinking about doing service accommodation, that you could think about. So I've talked about sort of what service accommodation is. I'm now going to cover, why would you do service accommodation? So it can and has for us, it increased revenue by 2 to 3 times what we would get on a service accommodation, on a AST. And I've got some figures that I can show people later on, that I'll show you later on for this. It also avoids the Section 24 mortgage taxation restriction. Because it's a business, the lending, the interest payments you pay on any lending you've got can be claimed against taxation, unlike the recent changes there have been for buy-to-let over the last 4 years under the Section 24 taxation restriction. You can also qualify for business rates. Now, we do talk about this on our course, so that's really good. So if you've got 1 property, for instance, in a business, you can claim small business rates relief, and that's good because you basically avoid paying council tax or business rates. Also, as part of the government COVID scheme, you could have qualified for the grant. So there's a grant of £10,000 if your rateable value was up to £15,000. And if your rateable value was up to £51,000, the grant was £25,000. So, we qualified for a grant, and I know other people who've done that as well. So that was very welcome during the current crisis. Another reason why you would do service accommodation is that the payment is agreed and paid in advance. So unlike a tenant where sometimes they don't pay, with guests staying in service accommodation, if they don't pay, they don't get the access. So they won't know how to get to the property. They won't know how to get the key. So payment is in advance and more or less assured. You can still get chargebacks through credit cards, and we get less than 1 of those a year, but you can get chargebacks, but they're pretty rare, and you can chase the guest. And we've had so out of 3 cases that we've prosecuted, we've got 1 outstanding, in actual fact. 1 outstanding. I mentioned earlier about they're guests and not tenants, so there's no ASTs. So the key thing there is that this isn't the guest's principal residence. It's not their permanent home. It's only temporary. And of course, it's very flexible. So I spoke about the property we bought in Broadstairs, and we wanted to have that for our own use sometimes. So again, you can allocate time for your own use as well. So it's very flexible. But we've also, in St Albans, there's a guy we know, he went on paternity leave for 6 months, and we rented his house out for him for 5 of those 6 months, and it proved really well for all of us, actually. And of course, when we talk about service accommodation, the sort of voids are naturally included because you're not going to have 100% occupancy. So everything is with voids included. And, quite often voids can get ignored on standard ASTs. Any questions from that? Okay. So how do we do?
Chris?
Yeah.
Just a quick question. Might be something you come on to later, relevance, but do you know anybody who's purchased a property for serviced accommodation within their pension successfully?
Right. So that's a good question, Andy. I don't, and it's a question really for people who understand pensions better than I do. I believe that it's easier for commercial properties to be put into pensions, or at least mixed use. I don't know anyone who's put service accommodation in, but it's a good question, actually. It's a good question, Andy.
Oh, but they're still residential properties, Andy.
Yeah, I thought
the way you're operating them that's different. They're still residential properties.
Yeah, I've seen a few videos of people saying that you can class them as commercial and migrate them into a SAS or a SIP. But yeah, I kind of agree with you, Sue. But yeah, I've seen very mixed.
I mean, the penalties are so horrible. I think it's all right for the course sellers or the gurus to get money off you to teach you it, but they're not there to catch the penalties, are they?
No, they're certainly.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. So thank you.
It's quite a nice idea, but yeah, as Sue says, it's still a residential property.
Can I pop in at this stage, Chris, or do you want to carry on?
No, I'm quite happy.
I had a comment. I'm an accountant, by the way. I had a comment on one of your lines in the previous slide where you were talking about the cash flow aspects of having a booking now for later.
Yeah. So
people book and they commit and they pay money now for a holiday in, let's say, November. If your financial year end in your company, or it's a tax year end, falls in between, then you should not be paying tax on that booking.
Yeah, so
most people pay far too much tax on serviced because they would put that into this year's figures.
Yeah, so it's a really good point, and we do end up accruing sums. So it is a very good point. So, but with ourselves and many others, Lisa might correct me on this actually, but I think we would only take a deposit, and the majority of the money is paid. No, yeah,
I can answer this. We actually don't take any money from anyone until 30 days prior to arrival. So it occasionally crosses that tax tax year.
Yeah, but impact, understand.
Sometimes we take £100 deposit if it's a long way in advance. It's a refundable deposit.
Yeah,
but that's it. Yeah. So we don't take any money until 30 days prior to arrival, and then it's non-refundable.
Okay, but I think some people do with some of.
Yeah, they do. Yeah, they do. But I think it actually increases your bookability, if that's such a word, if you only take it so many days before. I take 100%, 30 days.
I don't understand. This is an accounting
Oh, do you know what, Sue? You'd understand this if I can understand that. I can't understand accounting, but
I just say if you're in, not necessarily the riders, but if you're in service, make sure you understand the accounting aspects. That's all I need to.
Well, what we've done, Sue, is we've got a very good accountant that understands what we do, and a fantastic bookkeeper who does our day-to-day and understands. We've explained it to him. It has no background in this, but we've made him understand, and we've set up our accounts so that each booking is a reference in Xero. We use Xero, so that we can actually track each booking, how much it's cost us, how much we've,
Fantastic. So you know the P&L on each booking?
Yes.
Great.
Yes.
Yeah. So you're using tracking, in my words.
We are using tracking. Yes,
okay,
very much so. I love a bit of tracking.
Good enough. I was just wanted to.
Yeah. I don't think everyone does, but this is how we've set it up. We've set it up so we track the property so that we can do our KPIs on the property and per booking using tracking.
Yeah.
And that booking is in next year. You know what I mean? If
it's in next year, we won't be receiving the money till next year. So yeah.
Gotcha. Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Lisa.
Thank you, Chris.
Back up.
And Sue.
Yeah, and Sue's point about if you're paid in the previous financial year, because some people do take money months in advance, obviously to put that in the period where the booking's actually taken is a really good point. So thank you for that, Sue. So how do we do service accommodation? So our systems do things like send emails automatically to guests, to owners, to the housekeepers, to the cleaners, and any managers. So communication is absolutely key. So you can imagine that sometimes you'd have a changeover in a day. So you'd have maybe a guest leaving by 10 o'clock on a Monday morning, and by 3 o'clock in the afternoon, the property's got to be turned around, ready for the next guest. So you've got to make sure that your team know what's going on. They execute the processes you've got. You've got the right laundry. It's all boring stuff, but it's all got to be done properly because you're in the service business, and people's expectations are generally quite high. So that communication to guests, owners, housekeepers, cleaners, managers, etc., is really, really key. So we would send emails out automatically to those groups of people. We would also send text messages. So the read rate of a text message is much higher than the read rate of an email. And our text messages go out to where we send 3 text messages to guests. We send a text message in the morning that they're due to arrive, which gives them 3 critical pieces of information. The first is the address of the property they're going to, so the full address with postcode so they can put it in their sat-nav. The second key bit of information is the key code for the lock so that they can unlock the little key safe and get the key out so they can get in the property. And the third bit of information to keep all us technical people going is the Wi-Fi password. So we give 3 key pieces of information all in a text message. So it gets the guests to where they're going, gets them in with the key and gets them on the Wi-Fi. As long as people got those 3 bits of information, works really well. So text messages are fantastic for that. We also send a text message prior to people leaving, and we also send a text message asking for reviews. So reviews are really, really important in this business. Early days we were on with holiday letting. So the calendar synchronization across all the online travel agents is really key. So that you want to avoid double bookings. So it's really important that that's a reliable process and an effective process and quick. So it books out really quickly. The calendars are booked out and synchronized really quickly. We also use what's known as a pricing engine or dynamic pricing. So you might have seen this, well, you would have seen this when when booking with airlines or theatre tickets or sporting tickets or concert tickets, the price, if you look today, you'll have one price. If you look tomorrow, the price would have changed depending on supply and demand. And that's exactly what we use in our service accommodation. So what you would do here is you would define a minimum. So you'd set what your minimum acceptable nightly rate would be, and that would be say £70 a night. You'd set a maximum, which would say be several £100s a night, be really high, and the base price would be what you would expect your nightly rate to be. So in this instance, maybe £120. So what the system does is it uses data on local supply and demand. So it's really quite clever in terms of looking at your competitors, looking at what their demand is like, looking at what their pricing is like, and it sets the prices accordingly. And it does this every single day. They're getting more sophisticated, and to the extent that things like weather data is starting to be included. So, for instance, if you've got holiday lets and you know it's going to be a nice sunny weekend or week, it can start to use that data to adjust the prices. So super powerful. Because the prices are changing every day, it really helps your ranking on the online travel agents. So people like Airbnb, Booking.com, Home Away, they like to see some activity on the listings. They like to see that it's active, that it's people are interested in it, that it's changing, that it's volatile. So, and that, by its very nature, then means that your ranking within each of the OTAs is then helped by that volatility. I was at an event probably towards the end of last year now, and the person I was sitting next to, a lovely lady, she was spending about an hour a week determining what her pricing on her one SA should be for the following week. So you can imagine the amount of data you could use to try and look at competitors, look at whether to charge more or less at the weekend or weeks. When is high and low season? Are there any events on? There's a whole myriad of variables to consider when looking at pricing. So the pricing engine sort of takes all that away, really. We move also to direct bookings. So you do have to pay the online travel agents, so the Booking.coms and the Airbnbs of this world, rightly so, for the benefit that they bring. So we do quite a bit of work in terms of moving to direct bookings. So we do email marketing campaigns to previous guests. And as the old marketing saying about, it's 10 times easier to sell to somebody that you've already sold to than to get a new customer. So that's really important. We also do quite a bit of social media. And we're employing a social media person. We leave leaflets within each property offering a 5% discount for people booking direct. So there's quite a bit to do in terms of moving to direct bookings, and it's not all software. So people who've worked in big organisations will know that sometimes the cost and effort to actually automate something is just not viable, and sometimes you actually use a manual process because it's cheaper and sometimes more reliable. So we've got some of our processes which are manual because it just works out better that way. So what I've got here is, so this is an example of the 2-bedroom property we've got in St Albans. And I've sort of done complete years because it's good for comparison. I'm going to come on to COVID and how that's impacted us later. So as you can see, so October 2017, so the green line and the green data is when we started. So this is a property, so it's a 2-bed house that at the time would have rented for about say I think it was 1,100 a month. So the 2017 figures are just reflect that year's income from service accommodation, then you can see that what happens with a whole year. So what we would have got for 12 months is more than doubled across the whole year. And obviously this is a property that was sort of from a standing start, if you like, so it had no history. You can see from the figures, so if you look at revenue for 2018, you can see the volatility of the figures. So service accommodation isn't for people who need and rely on a regular income. The income stream is too volatile for that. But it is fruitful for, if you can tolerate the volatility, then that works really, really well. And also you can see from the occupancy that for the full years, we're hitting 73% occupancy, and that's pretty good in actual fact. So then if I move on to Primrose Corner, which is a 2-bedroom property we've got in Ramsgate. Again, the figures here, that the 550 during 2017 is what it was rented out at. That's how much we rented it out for a month. Now, this again has worked out really, really well for us. Again, you can see the volatility. This property is an example of, and I'll talk about this on the Hub podcast that was released this week, that I gave an interview with the Robs a little while ago. I was talking about the fact that how the pricing engine works, and the great thing about the pricing engine is it takes all your sort of emotion out of it. So the property in Ramsgate we would set at about £110, £120 a night. That's what we would seek to achieve on service accommodation. So it's a 2-bedroom, single bathroom, one double bed, 2 single beds, and a sofa bed in the lounge. Now, just over a year ago, we achieved over £200 a night using the pricing engine. Now, we didn't set it at £200 a night. That's just the activity that the pricing engine has detected. So that's the pricing engine doing what it should do. And now, so we would never have priced it at over £200 a night, because even though it's our property and we've completely refurbished it, I don't think it's worth £200 a night. But for whatever reason, this particular weekend, supply was short, demand was high, and the pricing engine recognised that and changed the pricing as a result of that. So I don't use that as an example that's happening. We're not getting £200 every weekend. That's absolutely not what's happening. The point I'm making is that every single day, the pricing engine is looking at supply and demand and setting the prices. That's the key point. And lastly, and this is actually the property that I'm in at the moment. So again, we get sort of quite good revenue. This is a 2-bedroom. There's no sofa bed, so this is a double bedroom and 2 single beds in the other bedroom. So again, that would rent for probably about £650 a month. Probably rent for about £650 a month. Okay, so I said that I'd talk about how we've been impacted by the coronavirus, and it was quite dramatic in actual fact. So we were actually in Thanet, this part of Kent, in the middle of March. We were just finishing off the property in Ramsgate, and we could see what I'm sure you'll remember. You were told that the pubs were still open, but don't go to them. That was really helpful. But you could sort of see what was happening. But almost overnight, all our leisure bookings were cancelled. So a lot of our income stopped. So during lockdown, we accommodated key workers. So by key workers, that includes wind farm workers. So just off of the coast of Thanet and Kent, this part of Kent, there's some huge wind farms actually, and they need quite a bit of maintenance. Surprisingly, it's not just stick them up and they work. So they've been key workers, the wind farm people. So that's kept us going. So we've been keeping those key workers. That's been a bit of a double-edged sword, because we've had to take a bit of a hit on the prices. So the prices reduced. But interestingly, what happened with the companies where they would normally have 2 of their workers in one property, because they were worried about the virus, they then started renting 2 properties, so 1 property for each person. So that sort of worked. We also had really special rates for NHS workers. So Lisa and I worked out exactly what it would cost us to run it, just at a cost level, and we were offering really, really good deals for people at NHS. I don't know if you remember the early days. I'm sure you do. People in the NHS needed to move around, and so we were trying to do our bit. We also had people in urgent need of accommodation. So by that, we had people that had wanted to continue with a house sale they had. They couldn't. They were going into a new build as it happened, and the new build stopped building. So they rented one of our properties for a month. Again, much cheaper than we would normally do. That we had insurance bookings, few insurance bookings, and relocation bookings. Interestingly, we got 1 bed in Luton that had a booking for 120 nights, and because she couldn't then relocate to her property, that was extended to 160 nights. So there has been some good things, good for revenue. I mean, it's been obviously a horrible time, the coronavirus, and people have been really poorly, been impacted really badly. But from a service accommodation perspective, there has been some good things. Summer bookings. So from the 4th of July, so from this Saturday, we can now start to house people on a leisure basis. One of the things that Lisa's been doing is actually cancelling bookings. So a lot of what I've been talking about today has been talking about getting bookings and how we get bookings and how we keep bookings. It's been really frustrating getting people. Lisa's been able to check every booking. So even from some key workers, if they don't get...
I'm happy to say about this.
Yeah, go on. Yeah, it'd be good. Yeah.
So we've had most of the OTAs have so Airbnb, as much as everyone slags them off, they actually blocked out all their calendars, and the other main OTAs have done they've been active on inquiry only. Booking.com, which is the biggest one, have been an absolute nightmare, and they've allowed bookings. So every booking has to be sort of validated. So I have been on the phone to Booking.com up to 3 times a day, which when you're on hold for the first 20 minutes is a pain. Then they have to call you back, and then they never call you back on the right number. But basically, we can only accept, as per the government guidelines, we can up until this weekend, we can only accept bookings from key workers, and most importantly, that need to be in the area. So I've had to cancel, and it goes completely against the grain to cancel bookings. But we have had to cancel, so many people, because you phone them and you say, are you a key worker? Yes, I'm a key worker. Do you need to be in the area? Well, no, I just want a holiday. It's like, yeah, me too. That's not going to happen. So it's been very difficult. And then last weekend I got one, and he said he did need to be in the area, but he's bringing his kids, and they were going to stay with his sister-in-law and all of this. And I had an email saying, yes, he needed to be in the area. I let the booking go through, and it was just a nightmare. And we're finding this is where the sort of due diligence comes in. So we've had to turn away bookings, but there have been a hugely increased amount of parties and stuff like that. So whilst, yes, we've lost revenue, we haven't lost our properties or the quality in our properties. So we can go back to taking, good bookings from, nice customers, because our properties aren't trashed because we allowed every Tom, Dick and Harry in. But it's been hard.
Yeah, thanks, Lisa. That was really good. Yeah, so it sort of does cut against the grain, but to do the right thing. So we've stopped people as we've been instructed by the government. So we haven't been taking leisure bookings. So we have been careful or Lisa's been careful with the due diligence and making sure that the people we have let in have been the right sort of bookings. So in terms of the positive side, 4th of July we can start with leisure bookings again. We're seeing sort of higher demand first, so we think there's going to be much higher demand for staycation this year, even if there are air bridges abroad. I'm not sure the appetite is there this year. Well, we haven't got the appetite ourselves for getting on planes at the moment, so we think the state this year will be a really good year for staycations. So that would be good. I was talking earlier about the impact coronavirus has had on our bookings, and so it's been reduced from 72 hours, but now we leave a 24-hour sort of cleaning day inserted between each booking. So we make sure that there's at least 24 hours, which is actually in fact more than 24 hours, because if somebody leaves at 10 o'clock on a Monday morning, say, the next booking wouldn't be until 3 o'clock on the Tuesday afternoon. So it means that the cleaners can get in. The standard of cleaning has been increased, and it was already good. And so we've got that so that's a cost now. It's an extra cost leaving a day between bookings. So we've got to look at the impact that's going to have on us. The other thing we've done is, in fact, what I've done a bit this week is we've put hand sanitizers in most of our properties now, so that people can sanitize their hands when they get into the property and while they're in here. We did some analysis on revenue. So I looked at Q2 last year, this is calendar Q2, against the calendar Q2 this year. And we're down by around 30%, which isn't obviously it is a big hit, but in actual fact, Lisa's done really well, because I would have expected that to have been a lot more in actual fact. So, absolutely the business has been impacted. But when I talk to people with commercial property, I talk to people on ASTs, they've all had challenges, and we'll continue to have challenges through the coronavirus until we're out of lockdown completely and the economy's back to normal. So as things stand, I think that's pretty good going, and that's all credit to Lisa for that. So what we can do for people is, we take the hard work out of obtaining bookings. So that's something we do for people. We don't do it for everybody, but we can use our systems to get bookings for people, and it's the bookings that people sort of struggle with the most. All our marketing and communication works really well. We can do all that for people. It works really well. We've got some people who manage the physical aspects of the property themselves, and what we do is we just do the marketing. And the way we operate is all payments are sent direct to the property owner, and we charge for our fees completely separately. So all the fees from Booking.com and Airbnb, etc., go directly to the property owner. And I think that is it. So are there any questions from that?
Hi, Chris. I've got a question.
Oh, hi, Ingrid. Nice to see you.
Hi. You too. Just wondering, because I've had that experience once on an Airbnb booking myself. When you take a booking for the future and you don't take the payment yet, would you, as a security measure, take a photo ID? Would you ask for a copy of passport or driving license?
Okay. Yeah. So I could answer that, but I think I'll let Lisa answer that, because she's much more at the sharp end than I am. Lisa, are you okay to answer that?
Yeah, I'm fine. So with Airbnb, we don't need to take any photo ID at all, because Airbnb deal with verification of guests, and we don't take a security deposit with Airbnb as well because they have a really big insurance policy. So you shouldn't need to do anything with Airbnb. That's my take on it. Booking.com, some hosts will want ID and photo ID and all of that sort of stuff. You just need to check that they are GDPR, is it right? GDPR, yeah, GDPR compliant, and that they store it responsibly and get rid of it responsibly. Now, the reason they would take that is because not everyone is who they say they are, and they might have a fraudulent card and all of that. We actually, because that's such a heavy workload, we've gone back to Booking.com taking our payments, therefore they deal with any fraudulent cards or whatever. But you shouldn't really have to give your right. Well, it depends on Airbnb. Definitely no, I would say, and I think from a guest point of view, Airbnb, or from a host point of view, sorry, not a guest point of view, host point of view, Airbnb is definitely the best people to get bookings from because their rate is lower. And they've got this big insurance policy, but they're all a bit, you know, one day they're good, the next day they're bad. It depends on who's answered the call. But yeah, but you know, we book with both when we go on holiday. So we use Booking.com, Airbnb, and TripAdvisor, which is who we host with. Swings and roundabouts, really. Lots of people like the bigger companies like Home Away. We tend to get longer term bookings, more 2-week holiday type bookings, but less bookings. Booking.com is definitely the biggest one, but we pay. Guests don't pay, we pay.
Yeah.
So
Thank you.
All right.
That's okay. Thank you, Ingrid.
Thank you both. Any other questions?
Hi, Soriana here. Hi.
Hello,
Chris and
Ariana.
Hi. I just wanted to say, well, we obviously know that we've got service accommodation and we are down completely. In fact, just as I was on this Zoom, we've had another 2 cancellations. It's just constant cancellations. We've got no bookings at all. So, and because we are in London, this is a real downer because obviously no one's coming to central London anyway, and no one's coming to sightseeing. But what I wanted to ask you was, with security and verification and everything like that, do you send out a contract which they have to sign and send ID photos or passport photos? So
when I did, so I know you use the same channel manager as myself.
Yeah, I do.
So previously we did send out an email at time of booking saying, and we had it put in our fine print. You have to have it put in your fine print on Booking.com because we only did it with Booking.com because Booking.com is the only one where you take your own money. So the others, they take the payment for you and they pass it on to you. Booking.com.
No, we've also gone back to Booking.com because it was just too horrendous what we had to go through when we had our own processor.
Right. So you've gone back to payment by booking. Right. So you
Yes.
don't need. I don't think you need to take any ID, but because any cashbacks or anything else, they will deal with it. Because the money is sent to you, they will deal with any credit card fraud or anything else.
But it's not even so much of that. It's just about them coming onto your property and not having any.
Right. I think you need to draw the line under that because you're letting your property out for short-term guests, and you can't do it unless you want an AST where you do a reference check on that guest. It's just it creates a job. You need to step back and take your heart out of it. It's very difficult because where Chris is at the moment, I'm very particular about who goes in there, but I've had to step back because you have to step back, and it's just a property at the end of the day. It's not your children. It's just a property.
Yeah.
but you do have to step back from it. And I do appreciate your problem with London, and London and big cities are going to be the last to pick up from this pandemic, the very last.
Well, we're thinking of going AST now, because
I think you might be as well for the next 6 months, because you've got restaurants shutting down, you've got all the tourist attractions shut down, you've got theatres shutting down. So why people come into London, that's why they come in. But all the outskirts, so the seaside resorts, hopefully St Albans and places like that, we will get, and plus you've got the 90-day rule, which is another thing, but we will get all of those tourist bookings because they don't need all those tourist attractions. Nobody comes into London, well, we do, but not many people go into London just for the sake of going into London. So big cities are going to be the last to pick up. And so I'm a member of a couple of sort of serviced accommodation groups, and this is what we've discussed. So it might not be a bad thing to go on an AST, but I would, if I were you, Ori, I would speak to Julie and do it all. If you've not done it before, I don't know if you've got any single tenants. You have, haven't you? Yes. I would actually go down the proper route, make sure you get your tenancy tied up, because what you don't, give them an AST, do the referencing, get the EPC, get the gas safety, make sure that everything is ticked, every box is ticked. Julie will help you with that, but you need to make sure you do it correctly, because if you only want that tenancy for 6 months, if things relax enough that you can go back to SA, then you need to make sure that everything is ticked, because sometimes getting out of a tenancy is like pulling teeth. So just to be warned about it.
Yeah, this is what's concerning me.
Yeah. But we could have a chat separately, Oriana, if that helps you.
Okay. Yeah. Happy to.
And Julie says she's happy to help. She's got she's got a lot of information there for you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Good offer. Really.
To Richard, I'm just going to answer this. Chris can get off his little bottom there and show everyone the view if it's not too dark. Oh God, he's got to do exercise.
Can you see this?
No.
And I'll answer Abir in a minute.
Hold on. Can you see that?
No, I see the reflection of what you have on your screen.
Open the window, Chris.
No.
Hold on. Ingrid, this is the flat.
Hold on a minute.
Hold on. Don't drop your computer out. Oh, look, that's a pretend seagull.
Is that?
That's the view from the window. Up a bit. We want to see the sea. There you go. There's the view.
Oh, that's lovely.
Very nice, Chris.
I can't see that. Oh yeah. Oh yes, I can now.
Very nice. Very, very nice.
Yeah, can you see my view? I got the picture of it in the background.
I don't know. We got into this. Was it?
Just a bit of a Chris beating.
Okay. Right. Okay. John Clear.
Yeah. John Clear's with the view talking. Right. So Abir, can you hear me? Where are you? Are you there? I can't see you.
Assume the pricing engines are dependent on the platform.
Right. So the pricing engine works with your channel manager. Okay. So the prices do actually come from Airbnb, but or not the prices. No, that's not true. The not the prices that come from Airbnb. It's the demand or the interest.
Okay.
So,
you want me to answer this one?
no.
Okay then.
Do you want to?
There you go.
I'm just reading it. So, with you put your prices into your pricing engine, and you put it in, and your channel manager talks to the pricing engine, and obviously, as Chris said, you set your 3 levels: your base level, your high level, your low level, and your channel manager sort of spews them out to all the OTAs. So Booking.com will pick up the pricing, the prices that the price. Go on, you do it. I'm waffling now.
So all you do is you set your price in the pricing engine, and the pricing engine sends the prices out to all the OTAs. It's as simple as that.
I said that.
So thank you, Ingrid.
With a bit of waffle, but I said it.
So if you think of it's a bit like a hub and spoke. In the centre is the pricing engine. The pricing engine, you set your prices, and then that sends it out to all the other OTAs that you're connected to, all the other online travel agents. It's as simple as that. This is why the software is so key. So it's the software at the centre that controls everything. That you has got to be absolutely right. So that's what.
But the demand is picked up. So the pricing engine picks up the demand from Airbnb, but not from our properties, just from the wider community.
Yeah. And Abia's point was, the question was, is it independent? Is the pricing engine independent of the OTAs? And the answer to that is yes.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, well, it's nearly 9:10, everyone. Unless there's any other, if there's a single last question, I'll answer it. Otherwise, I'm going to close the call.
Yeah, I think Bud said, could we have the next meeting at your place? If you can cope with the 53 steps, then yes.
But what we'll do is we'll put a link to our website on the WhatsApp. And
no, he wants to be there. I'm sorry, but
I'm sure.
Chris, when does the pub open there as well?
4th of July.
I mean, my brother's got a pub, and although he's opening, he's doing restricted opening actually. So 4th of July is the answer though, Andy.
Is that even that big Witherspoons that you talk about all
Oh
the time?
yeah, I think that's been open, hasn't it?
I don't know about so you can walk. There's a 20-minute walk on the beach to the biggest Wetherspoons in England, and it's right on the coast. It's right in Ramsgate. It's absolutely fantastic, beautiful building. It was a casino. Really, it's worth it, and it's absolutely lovely. So that's what Andy's talking about. For the next meeting, so Rob Bentz from the Property Hub is going to come on to our next call. It's going to be more of a Q&A session. So what would be really helpful is for people to have questions to ask Rob. So he hasn't sort of got a presentation, but I have cajoled him into coming along, and I thought it'd be good for people to have the opportunity to ask him questions. So please, between now and next month, have a think about any questions you've got for Rob Bentz, and maybe we'll try and get a list of questions beforehand, so we can make the most of that event. That'd be really, really good. So the next meeting will still be a Zoom meeting. That'll be on the first Thursday of August. That's the 6th of August. Well, I'll bring the meeting to a close. I'd like to thank you all for attending. I'd like to thank Julie and Sam for two really, really great talks. So thank you very much for two really interesting talks, and I got a lot from both of those. So thank you very much, and have a pleasant evening, everyone. Stay safe, and see you next month. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Chris.
Take care, everyone. Bye bye.
Bye.
Thank you, Chris, Lisa. Thank you.
Cheers. Bye. Cheers, Lewis. Cheers, everyone.
See you, everyone.
Bye.
Cheers. Bye bye.
We're back to the beach house in September.
I doubt that. With masks on.
Yeah.
All right.
Networking at a distance.
Oh, how does that work?
Right, thanks.
Yeah, we'll see.
Thanks, everyone.
I'll see you next month, guys.
See you, Lewis. Take care. Bye.
Yeah.
Bye. Bye, Ori.
Bye.